Cindy. I almost didn't turn around. Ava was heavy against my hip. My diaper bag was digging into my shoulder, and every step sent a sharp sting through the blister on my heel. Then a horn sounded behind me again. Cindy. I stopped. My dad's car pulled onto the shoulder so fast gravel kicked behind the tires. He climbed out, stared at me, then at my 9-month-old daughter pressed against my chest. "Why are you walking?" he demanded. "Where's your car?" "It's fine, Dad." His eyes dropped to the way I was favoring my left foot. "No, where's your car?" I swallowed. Eric's mom took it. Dad went completely still. I forced the rest out before I could lose my nerve. "She said I'm lucky they let me stay in their house. She said if I want privileges, I need to stop acting like I can do whatever I want." Dad looked at Ava, then back at me. "Privileges? She means the car. That car is yours." "I know." That morning, Ava had run out of formula sooner than I expected. I'd asked Margaret for my keys because the store was only 10 minutes away. She had been sitting at the kitchen island drinking coffee. "No," she'd said without even looking up. I thought I'd misheard her. "No. You've been difficult all week, Cindy. You don't get to disrespect me and then expect access to everything." "It's my car." Her expression had hardened. "You live under my roof." I'd texted Eric immediately. His response came less than a minute later. "Just stop fighting Mom on everything." So I'd put Ava in her carrier and walked. Dad looked at my heel again. "How long has she had your car?" I hesitated. 6 days. His jaw tightened. "She actually told me I'll get it back when I've earned the privilege of driving again." He didn't shout. That scared me more. Dad opened the passenger door, took the diaper bag from my shoulder and said, "Get in the car. We're fixing this tonight." My stomach dropped. "Dad, please. If you confront Margaret, she could throw us out. Eric's business isn't doing well, I'm not working yet, and we don't have anywhere else." "You have me." "It's not that simple." He waited until I had Ava strapped safely into the back seat. Then he got behind the wheel but didn't start the engine. Instead, he turned toward me. His voice was quieter now. "Cindy, whose name is actually on that car." I frowned. "Mine." "Only yours." "Yes, you helped me buy it before I married Eric. Why?" Dad stared through the windshield for a moment. Then he reached for the ignition. "Because if that car is legally yours," he said, "I want to know why your husband and his mother think they have the right to keep it from you." And suddenly, I realized Dad wasn't just angry about my keys. He was thinking about something I hadn't even considered. Something involving the car itself. Dad drove in silence for almost a minute before he asked, "Start from the beginning. When did Margaret start deciding what you were allowed to do?" I looked back at Ava, sleeping in her car seat. It wasn't like this at first. After Ava was born, I'd temporarily left my job. The pregnancy had been difficult, our expenses had climbed, and Eric's contracting business had started losing work. When Margaret offered us rooms in her house, Eric called it our chance to recover. 6 months, he'd promised. We save money, then we're gone. But Margaret's help slowly became rules. First, she decided when I could use her kitchen. Then she questioned every grocery purchase. Eventually, she wanted to know where I was going whenever I left with Ava. Dad glanced at me, and Eric allowed that. I stared through the window. 6 days ago, I told them I was meeting a former coworker about possibly returning to work. Margaret had blocked me near the front door. "Give me your keys." I'd actually laughed because I thought she was joking. "I'm 29, Margaret. And you live in my house." "They're my keys." That was when Eric walked into the hallway. I expected him to defend me. Instead, he said, "Mom is helping us. Stop acting like everything belongs to you." I refused to hand over the keys and went upstairs. That night, they disappeared from my purse. The next morning, my car was gone too. Margaret didn't even deny it. It's in my garage, she told me. You'll get it back when your attitude changes. Dad's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Eric knew. He knew exactly where it was. Then Dad asked something that seemed completely unrelated. Has Eric asked you to sign anything recently? I turned toward him. 2 weeks ago, some papers for his business. He called one an emergency contact acknowledgement. Did you sign? No, I told him I wouldn't sign something I didn't understand. Dad's expression changed. And after that, I thought carefully. Then I remembered. 3 days later, he asked where I kept my vehicle title. Dad immediately checked his mirror and moved into the turning lane. Dad, Margaret's house is straight ahead. I know. He turned anyway. A bank sign appeared beyond the windshield. Where are we going? Dad pulled into the parking lot and shut off the engine. Before we take your keys back, he said, I want to know why your husband suddenly needed your title. Then he opened his door. The bank manager checked twice before looking up from his screen. There's no lien recorded here against your vehicle, Mrs. Hale. I exhaled so hard my shoulders dropped. For a second, I felt ridiculous. Maybe Dad had connected things that weren't connected. Maybe Eric asking about my title had been strange, but harmless. Then my phone vibrated. Eric. I declined the call. It rang again before we reached the bank doors. Then a third time. Dad looked at me. Answer it. I did. Where are you? Eric snapped. I'm with my dad. There was a pause. You left without telling Mom. I needed formula for Ava. You need to come home before you make this embarrassing. Dad heard every word. We're going to get your car, he said. Eric went silent. When we reached Margaret's house, Eric's truck was already outside. Beside it sat an unfamiliar sedan. Inside, Margaret stood in the living room with Eric and 2 men in business clothes. Her face tightened when she saw Dad. You brought your father into this. I came for my keys. Margaret folded her arms. We took the car because you've been unstable with money lately. My face burned. She said it loudly enough for everyone to hear. It's my car, I said. Give me my keys. No. One of the strangers looked between us. Excuse me, are you Cynthia Telson Hale? Yes. He introduced himself as a representative for a private commercial lender, reviewing financing for Eric's contracting company. I frowned. What does that have to do with me? His eyes shifted toward Eric. Your vehicle is listed as additional collateral on the application. The room went silent. My what? Eric stepped forward. Cindy, you agreed to this. No, I didn't. Margaret scoffed. Don't start pretending because your father is here. The lender representative opened his folder. There is an authorization bearing your signature. He placed a copy on the table. I picked it up. My name was there. The signature even looked like mine. But I knew immediately. Dad leaned closer. Cindy, is that your signature? I looked directly at Eric. No. The color drained from his face. The lender representative slowly closed the folder and turned toward my husband. Then we have a much bigger problem than a family argument. Stop. The lender representative gathered every document from the table and slid them back into his folder. Nothing moves forward until we establish who authorized this. Eric immediately stepped toward me. Cindy, listen, it was temporary. I stared at him. You just said I agreed. I was going to pay everything back before it mattered. That sentence landed harder than the first lie. Dad's voice stayed controlled. Give my daughter her car keys. Margaret shook her head. The car stays here until Eric gets his financing sorted out. Even the lender representative looked at her. I finally understood why they had been so determined to keep me away from my own vehicle. Eric asking about my title. My keys disappearing. Margaret moving the car. Eric telling me to stop fighting his mother. This wasn't only about controlling where I went. Something was being done with my property while I was being kept away from it. Dad pointed at my phone. Photograph everything you can. Save Eric's texts. Save anything Margaret sent about the car. I started taking pictures of the paperwork. Eric reached toward the page in my hand. Give me that. The lender representative stepped between us. Mr. Hale, don't touch these documents. Nobody removes, changes, or destroys anything connected to this application. For the first time, Eric backed away. Margaret muttered something under her breath and marched toward the hallway. She returned with my keys and dropped them onto the table. They're happy. Dad didn't reach for them. He was staring at the open document folder beside Margaret. Cindy. His voice made me turn. A familiar piece of paper was sticking from underneath the loan documents. My vehicle title. I grabbed it. No. Margaret looked away. I had kept that title inside a locked file box in our bedroom. Eric, how did this get here? He said nothing. Only one other person knew where I kept the spare key to that box. My husband. The lender representative pulled another page from the file. Mrs. Hale. I looked at him. He placed an authorization beside my title. Eric moved forward again. Wait. The representative raised his hand. Before anyone leaves, Mrs. Hale, you need to see exactly what was submitted in your name. The lender representative placed the complete application in front of me. Your vehicle wasn't mentioned casually, he said. It was submitted as additional collateral. Dad stood beside me while I read. Eric's contracting company was behind on supplier payments. The assets belonging to the business weren't enough to support the amount he wanted to borrow, so my paid-off car had been added to strengthen the application. I looked at Margaret. You knew. She pressed her lips together. Eric answered instead. Mom has money invested in the company. If the business failed, she would lose money too. So you used my car. I was trying to save my company. You stole my title. His eyes dropped. The lender representative pointed to the authorization. This signature appears to have been reproduced from another document. I recognized it then. An old insurance form. Eric had copied my signature. Everything finally made sense. They needed the title. They needed physical access to the vehicle during verification. Most importantly, they needed me not to interfere before the financing closed. So Margaret had turned my independence into a punishment. My keys disappeared. My car was locked in her garage. And while I was walking down the road carrying our daughter, my husband knew exactly why. No funds have been released, the representative said. This transaction is stopped. Eric stepped toward me. Cindy, please, don't destroy our marriage over one desperate decision. I looked at Ava, asleep against Dad's chest. One desperate decision. My voice shook, but I didn't lower it. You watched your wife carry your baby down the road, because keeping me away from my own car mattered more than telling me the truth. Eric opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Margaret finally snapped. Enough, you still live in my house. I reached into my bag. Her house key landed on the table between us. Not anymore. That evening, Dad helped me pack clothes, Ava's crib essentials, my documents, and everything we could fit into our cars. Margaret stood in the hallway watching. She didn't control the door anymore because I was choosing to walk through it. Before leaving, I saved every message about my car, copies of the loan documents, and proof that my title had been removed from my locked file box. I later took everything to an attorney. The lender formally rejected Eric's application because of the unauthorized documentation. Without that financing, Eric had to scale down his company and negotiate directly with his creditors. My property wasn't going to rescue him. Dad gave Ava and me a room at his house while I got back on my feet. There were no conditions attached, no rules about whether I could drive, no one asking me to earn basic freedom. Eric eventually admitted he had known why Margaret took my car. He wanted it kept at her house until the lender finished the financing process. That admission ended whatever uncertainty I still had. We separated permanently. Months later, I returned to work and rented a small apartment for Ava and me. I moved my money into accounts I controlled, secured my important documents, and made sure nobody else could quietly take possession of what belonged to me. Margaret lost the one threat that had kept me obedient, the idea that without her house, I had nowhere to go. Eric lost the financing he had tried to secure with my property. And I got something much more important than my keys back. Sometimes Dad visits and sees that same car sitting outside my apartment. There's nothing impressive about it. It's just my car again. Transportation. Not permission. The night my father said, "Get in the car," he didn't just help me take my keys back. He helped me realize that anyone who needs to trap you to keep you isn't giving you a home.